Today is Laetare Sunday. Laetare meaning rejoice. This Sunday is set apart from the other Sundays of Lent. We have more singing. We wear rose instead of violet. The tone is one of hopefulness and joy. We are now past the halfway point of Lent, and that is something worth rejoicing. But our readings, especially at the start, aren't as full of rejoicing as we might expect. Our first reading from Chronicles was written after the Israelites returned from their exile in Babylon, and seems to be a reflection on exactly what went wrong. We hear that the princes, priests, and all the people added infidelity to infidelity. They continually rejected God, and when he sent prophets and messengers early and often, they not only ignored them, they mocked the messengers of God, despised his warnings, and scoffed at his prophets. The author of Chronicles, it seems, has no doubt as to what led to the downfall of their kingdom. Our psalm seems equally lacking in joy. The first stanza starts, "By the stream of Babylon we sat and wept when we remembered Zion." This is a psalm of a people in exile, remembering all that they had lost as they languished as captives in a foreign land. And yet we are supposed to rejoice today. The title, Laetare Sunday, Rejoice Sunday, comes from our entrance antiphon. Rejoice, Jerusalem, and all who love her. Be joyful, all who were in mourning. And I think that's the key, that movement from mourning to rejoicing. This movement is what Jesus was beginning to reveal to Nicodemus in our gospel. He gives the example of Moses and the bronze serpent. Now, this example, which is pictured on the cover of our bulletin, takes us back to when the people on their journey through the desert said to Moses, "Why have you brought us up from Egypt to die in the wilderness, where there is no food or water? We are disgusted with this wretched food." That wretched food, by the way, is the manna from heaven, the bread of angels that miraculously appeared every morning and kept them alive. But now it's wretched food. At this point, the people were attacked by seraph serpents, and all who were bitten began to die. The solution that God gave to Moses was to make a bronze serpent, mount it on a pole, and raise it above the people. Then all who looked at it were saved. The serpent, the very cause of their suffering, became the means of their salvation. The author of Chronicles had realized this important truth. After all their wondering what had gone wrong, after all their time weeping by the waters of Babylon, the author of Chronicles ends our first reading and the entire book with that great proclamation of King Cyrus, the command that not only returned the people to Jerusalem, but provided the means to rebuild the temple. The author of this book wanted those who read it to realize that they had never really been abandoned by God, that God, while allowing them to experience the consequences of the infidelities added to infidelities, had in fact been working all along, turning those consequences into the means of their salvation, as he had with the serpent in the desert, using that time in exile to guide them back to true worship, with their return to Jerusalem already planned. And of course, the ultimate example of this reversal is the cross. We often take the cross and what it means for granted. For the people of the ancient world, the cross was terrifying. It was the symbol of fear that the Roman Empire used to keep people in line. It was designed to be visible. The crosses stood on a hill overlooking Jerusalem, reminding all who saw them of what would happen to you if you dared to defy the Romans. And we can see how well it worked. Only one of the apostles, John, was present at the crucifixion. We might want to chastise the others for lacking courage, but we should not forget how good the Romans were at their jobs. The crucifixion was not just a death sentence, it was a message that the apostles heard very clearly. So I think it's worth imagining then, maybe even from the Roman perspective, what happened when the apostles and the early Christians had the same outlook on the crucifixion that the author of Chronicles had on the Babylonian exile. Because in those early days of the church, a miraculous transformation took place. The cross, that instantly recognizable symbol of tyranny, subjugation, and death, became a symbol of freedom, victory, and life. The Christians, without a fight, stole one of Rome's most recognizable symbols of power. And the more the Romans tried to take it back, the more it slipped through their fingers. As St. John Chrysostom wrote, "The living who waged a war on a dead man proved helpless." We rejoice in the middle of Lent because we trust that all of the things that right now look like the exile did on the way to Babylon will one day look like the exile did on the way back from Babylon. All the things that look like the serpents on the ground in the desert will one day look like the bronze serpent on the pole. And all the things that look like the cross on Good Friday will one day look like the cross on Easter Sunday. In all of the crosses that we face, we should remember what Paul wrote to the Ephesians. Even when we were dead in our transgressions, God has brought us to life with Christ.